Hello, friends. We're back with the Chris and Ryan show. Today we're at episode 4. Very special episode. We're going to be answering your questions and the questions that have been submitted in. We're really looking forward to that. But before we talk about and answer those questions, we're going to just have a quick recap, catch up, and talk about the year ahead and how we're feeling about it. How you feeling, Ryan?
I'm feeling fantastic. I'm actually feeling a little bit strange, the fact that we're doing this over video. It's a bit weird, eh?
It is a
We're
bit
used
weird.
to doing this in person, but COVID times, we need to stick by the rules, do everything that we can to make sure that what we're doing is helping others at the same time. So we're going to do this virtually.
Yeah, adapt and overcome. So
Adapt
that's
and
what we're about.
overcome. But yeah,
What's
I'm feeling fantastic. I'm really looking forward to, well, it is already the start of the year, but I'm really looking forward to doing whatever I can to achieve my goals this year.
Mm-hmm. What have you got in the pipeline? What kind of stuff have you got
What have
coming
we
up?
got in the pipeline? We've got a lot. I've just started using this app called Notion. It's like a sort of note-taking app. It has tons of templates inside of it that you can set timelines for stuff for goals. So I've just made a list of a bunch of goals that I want to get done. A lot of health-related goals. I want to fix a lot of problems health-wise. Nothing mental, nothing, but it's just a couple of things that's not working for me. Looking forward to launching the business. We've had a couple of changes since we last spoke, so that'll be coming soon. I'm not going to reveal too much. And I think a main goal for me coming up for the years, I want to read a lot more.
Good.
I've definitely been reading. I use an app called Audible as well, so I listen to a lot of books, but it's more actually setting aside time for me to just relax, like relax and read, rather than trying to force myself to read and being like, fuck, you've not read today. Why have you not read today? And like putting myself down. Use it as more like a relaxing thing rather than putting too much pressure on myself to do it.
No,
That's
I absolutely agree with
year.
you. I feel like the same. I think a lot of people feel the same with reading. It's almost like a task rather than an enjoyable thing to do. So
Yeah.
but the key to that is finding a book that you actually genuinely enjoy reading. You know, once you find something, and we'll talk about that later on as our book recommendations and what we enjoyed, but I found personally is reading something you're actually interested in helps so much more rather than just something that you think will be beneficial, you know? So
I also I watched a video earlier, there's a guy on YouTube called Ali Abdul that I watch. Definitely check them out if you want to get on some personal growth hype. But he talks about books a lot. He read 100 books last year, which is crazy. So he's managed to read 2 books a week. But a couple of rules he has for himself is not to put yourself down when you don't finish a book. Like, not finishing a book is fine, and also not to put yourself down by that you can skim books, like you can skip out stuff. If you see a chapter that you're like, I'm not really interested in that, fuck it, just move on to the next one or move on to the parts of the book that you actually want to read that you're interested in. Because I feel like there's this thought process of like, you have to read the whole book, otherwise you're not doing it properly, which isn't a thing. Just do it. Just read what you want to read to get the information you want.
I relate with you on that. I'm definitely on that wavelength because I've done that as well. I've not finished books, and sometimes there's chapters you don't enjoy, and I would just skip it. But you think in your head, well, you almost, it's like a weird thing. You almost feel like bad about it. You're like, well, if I'm not reading the whole thing, then I'm not going to read it at all. But no, it's your choice. It's your book. You read. You get you extract the information out that you want to get out of it, and that's the most important thing. Even if you take one positive point away from a book, then the book's done its job.
Yeah. So that's my goals and plans for this year. What's yours? What's your plans?
I want to have another positive year. 2020 was a really positive year for me, despite the COVID situation. I didn't let that affect me. I won't let anything affect me. So yeah, it was a positive year, and I'm going to continue that, push forward with Incovo.
Nice.
We're going to launch Incovo events this year, so we're going to be doing really cool, fun networking events for like 400 people plus.
Looking forward to that.
Quite big corporate events, but there'll be music, balloons, ping pong tables, cool guest speakers. So it's going to be a different vibe altogether than what you would typically get at a networking event. Obviously, we've started our podcast, so we'll be pushing forward with that.
Yeah.
My music project that will be coming out with Paddy in February, March time. And what else have we got? That's the main stuff for me: podcast, music, and Incovo, and obviously just when gyms open as well. Going back to the gyms, I'm an avid gym goer. So
I think we had a similar goal as well, that we want to get outside more.
Absolutely,
and just actually explore nature and things. I think that's.
Did we not speak about that Like in 2018 originally.
So right, really quick funny story, and then we'll get onto the Q&A. 2018, my birthday meal, everyone got together. There was a bunch of us, and we said at that point, we were like, right, we need to start getting outdoors more, get up Munros, like go walking, spend more time in nature. And it's taken us until 3 weeks ago to all get together and actually get outside for a nice walk up Harlow Reservoir. But it was but we're actually actioning it now. It shows you how long it can take to get a plan in motion with loads of other stuff going on.
Well,
It's taken a year and a half. No,
kind of like the podcast.
Aye.
I mean, we first thought about it kind of at the early months of this year, March, and then I put that post up saying I was going to do one, and then cancelled that out, and now we're doing it together. So that's basically taken a year to actually form that, to bring it together. So things do take time, and the point there is to be patient and just continue working on it. A lot of people don't see progress over a couple of months and then they give up on it. But if you just run with it and keep that idea progressing slowly, things do come together, and it has come together. I've seen that now.
Yeah, or like on social media, you'll see what someone's achieved at the end of it, but you don't see the journey behind it and how hard it's taken.
And the journey's important, but nobody's seen the year that we've had to go through to get kind of the podcast up and running in the small, and it's not like we've done anything major to get it started. It's just putting the time and effort in aside, saying we need to focus on this, we need to push it forward, and we have done that slowly. So buying the equipment for it,
slowly but surely.
Yeah, booking the guests,
recording the first podcast 5 times before we're happy with editing. Yeah.
So all of that stuff, and it's good because you come together. We think we could improve on that, get better and better. So I think that's definitely a point to note, is that things do take time to get to where your goals are, but just to stick with it and don't be disheartened when things maybe don't move as fast as you want. So
that's it, baby.
So our Q&A from our beautiful fans, beautiful listeners.
Beautiful fans.
What is what? I meant listeners, not fans.
Podcast questions. So today's episode, like we already said, question and answer session. Lovely people that follow us on Instagram and friends and stuff on Facebook have submitted some questions for us to answer, and we're going to kick off with the first one. You're going to take the lead on this. What is a positive person?
What is a positive person? Well, for me, a positive person is somebody that's emotionally connected. So to give you an example, somebody that's an empathetic person, somebody that cares about your emotions and understands your emotions, or can understand your emotions. It's actually quite a complex emotion to be able to have. A lot of people don't understand empathy and how to be empathetic, but that is what a positive person is, or part of a positive person. So empathy and being able to understand emotions and being able to connect with the people around you, on a different kind of emotional level, rather than just being an external person. And just, you can be a good listener, but another additional level to being a good listener is being empathetic and actually taking the emotion out of what the person's saying and being able to action that. So being supportive. A lot of people, everybody, in fact, not even a lot of people, everyone during their life are going to go through highs and lows. The success, there's hills and valleys, and the hills take care of themselves. But it's when you're in the valleys that you need people there. So for me,
That's
a positive
wonderful
person
analogy. I like that.
Yeah, for me, somebody that is going to be there for your highs and lows. That's what a positive person is somebody that supports you, whether you're at the top of that mountain or whether you're at the bottom of it. Something else is kind of forms around the whole growth mindset. If somebody is and we're both in growth mindsets, we're looking to progress our lives, we're looking to move quickly in different aspects, pushing forward our ideas. I think a really important point is somebody that in that growth mindset, like I was saying to you before, is that while you're in that phase of growth, is that you need to prepare yourself to disassociate yourself from old friend groups. Because when you have a group of friends, say you've got a group of 5 friends, and you all of a sudden, say, right, I'm in a growth mindset now, I want to push forward a better job, I want to earn more money, I want to have this lifestyle, you're curating your lifestyle. And when you do that, a lot of people around you won't be ready to make that move up to a growth mindset. So you need to be ready for them to say, as you're progressing, you're naturally going to not be the same as what you were before. So your personality is going to change, which means that the people that aren't ready to become in a growth mindset are going to, grow further apart from you. So you need to be prepared to not be friends with people that you were previously friends with, and you need to move towards a different group of people. So it's always It's always about pushing towards a more positive group of people, more positive people in your life and less negative people. So yeah, a positive person is somebody
So
for me.
Yeah, we've got empathy, which is an amazing trait. We've got being supportive to your friends. What you just described there is like when you are a positive person, is making sure that you sort of understand that there is going to be hard times you need to go through to break away from the negative people, because it
Yeah,
really brings you down when you get to that point.
absolutely. And the last couple of points is obviously just standard stuff like being a polite person. I think please and thank you, being a good listener, not interrupt them when somebody speaks. And, I think all the small things like eye contact and moving, nodding your head when you're listening to somebody, all these stuff go towards being a positive person. You're connected to the person is what essentially you're doing there. But not only being a good listener, but also being a thoughtful listener. So when you're talking to me, I'm not only listening to what you're saying, I'm actually thinking about what you're saying, processing it, and going to spit out an idea that might even be better or an alternative angle to take it at. So, yeah, not only being a good listener, but also being a thoughtful thinker about what the person's saying. Another really important one is patience as well. Being patient with people. A lot of people get angry quickly. They get upset quickly at people, and they don't have any patience. And people want to hold a grudge and all this stuff. There's absolutely no time for that at all. So being patient with people is really important, because not everyone, nobody's the same as you. So your ability is different from other people, but recognizing that being patient, I think, is a crucial one.
Being forgiving, like being patient, but like you
Yeah,
said there about
absolutely.
holding on a grudge and something, being forgiving. There's nothing worse than holding on to a grudge and being angry at someone for God knows how long, because it just fills you up with negative emotions. Like someone maybe brings up that person in a friend group, or you think about memories that have happened in the past about that specific person. I think it's definitely, this doesn't go, you don't have to do this to be a positive person, but it's definitely something that you can do to help sort of push yourself forward in
Yeah,
more positive ways. I allow yourself to forgive people that have done bad by you.
absolutely. I've never fallen out with anybody, and I'll never fall out with anybody. See, if just to give a little quick example, if something's ever happened where I've had an argument with somebody or a falling out or something like that, as soon as it's over, I'll just say, look, I'm not going to argue. Let's just apologize, put it behind us. There's no time to there's absolutely no time in this life as a human to be falling out with somebody and arguing. I actually seen a video, and this is a little bit of a divert, but it was a man that was in court. This is in America, a Muslim man, who somebody had killed his son. Like a man had think had shot his son, and his son was a uni student in America, and because of his religious beliefs, this was in the courtroom. He actually gave a tissue to his son's murderer and hugged him and forgave him. And obviously that's one of the I don't know about Islam as a religion, but I think that's one of like the core beliefs is forgiveness. And he hugged his son's murderer and apologized.
Unbelievable.
And he said it didn't apologize. Sorry, he accepted his apology, and he said forgiveness is one of the most powerful things a human can do. So that's I know and I know everyone's different, but I think that's a really really important point is forgiveness and not letting things affect you. People are bigger than small things like that. My last point for a positive person is somebody that has interest and aspirations. I think somebody that's a positive person is somebody that's looking to progress. They're a progressive person. And for me, somebody that's progressive is somebody that's interested in different things, whether it's music or, whether it's sports or, they have interests and they follow their interests and having aspirations with those interests. I want to be an athlete. I'd like to be a musician. I want to do this. I want to do that. Or I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Somebody that has that kind of growth mindset to me is a positive person. So I think all of those things put together is what makes up a positive person, is somebody that's emotionally connective, supportive, there for the highs and lows. They're patient, they're polite, they have interests and aspirations, and they're a good listener, and a thoughtful person as well. That for me is what a positive person is.
Fantastic. I don't really have a lot to add. I thought by the end of this, because we're doing a sort of lead on questions kind of thing, I'd have a lot to add, but you've basically summed up a lot of probably most things that I would have thought of. So yeah, that is a positive person.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Good. Hopefully that answers your question.
I hope so as well. So question 2 for you, Ryan, is how to deal with setbacks.
This is a really, really good question, because everyone deals with setbacks completely differently. But the way that I deal with setbacks, I used to be horrendous with dealing with setbacks. I used to, as soon as something never happened, or as soon as something happened that I wasn't expecting to happen, and it was happened in a bad way, I would just put myself down. I'd be like, oh no, this has happened. I would just crumble. But I've sort of changed my mindset, and what I do now to deal with setbacks is, I look at the setback itself, and I reflect on what actually happened that caused the setback to happen in the first place, and then I sort of define that whether it's controllable or uncontrollable. So if it's controllable, is something that I can actually, it's something that I've done, or it's something that has happened to me that's caused that to happen. And then you've got your uncontrollables, like for example, COVID. COVID is, there's nothing that we can do about anything. There's nothing that we can do about going into lockdown. There's absolutely nothing we can do about that. So it's breaking it down into whether it's controllable or uncontrollable. If it's controllable, you can lead on to the next step, which is defining what you can do to then move forward. Because a setback is a setback. We're going to come across them the whole life. You still need to move forward. So it's looking at what we can do. If it's uncontrollable, then it's understanding and allowing yourself to know, well, I can't control it. There's nothing I can do about that. Finding some way to then go forward with that. And if it's controllable, it's looking at your actions that's caused that in the first place and what you can do to change that. So then creating a plan to then move forward from there. So it's reflection, understanding, and then making a plan to move forward is how I deal with setbacks. Nowadays I just don't let it get to me emotionally. I just try to understand and then move forward from there. I think giving yourself time to reflect and actually understand why something's happened is a much better way than putting yourself down about it or just accepting it for what it is and not doing anything about it. Acceptance is part of it, but not doing anything about it is the problem. So making a plan to then move forward. That is how I deal with setbacks, which is actually talking about control and controllables and uncontrollables. I've got that from doing a bit of research in a philosophy called Stoicism, which is a philosophy from back in the Roman sort of Greek times, which is unbelievably applicable to current day times and everything that's going on just now. So what I'll do for everyone is in the show notes below, I'll link to some links to podcasts and blogs and things that really talk about Stoicism, so that you can do some research for yourself and understand it a bit more, because they will probably be able to explain that a lot better than I did.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I think the whole thing around setbacks, the big thing for me is accepting it. Acceptance is massive, and I think I've become pretty good at that now. But it's people trying to get into the habit of becoming good at that and just accepting that, before accepting a setback, it's a really big thing to just accept that setbacks will happen.
Yeah.
So you're accepting them before they've happened. So accept that things in life aren't going to go to plan, because things in life don't go to plan. Nothing ever goes to plan, basically. I mean, things always change, and accepting that is a massive thing. And once you accept that you're part of a bigger system, we're all just small cogs in a big system. So we can't control, the way that cog turns. In terms of setbacks, we can control our own cogs in terms of the direction that our life goes in, but we can't control it in terms of the external factors. And that's what a setback is, an external factor, something that can't be controlled. Of course, if a setback could be not achieving a goal at the gym, but that's up to you to change that. But
that's a controllable. It's probably a good idea to give examples of what a controllable thing is. A controllable could be not hitting your personal best because you've not been consistently going to the gym for the 3 times a week that you said you go. You've only been going once or twice when you feel like it. That's a controllable. An uncontrollable for not hitting that personal best could be an injury that you sustained trying to lift something at work or outside, and it's just pinged your shoulder. That could be an uncontrollable. There's nothing you can do about that.
Absolutely.
So then you need to put a plan in place to overcome that setback, right? What do I need to do from here that's going to end up allowing me to hit that personal best at some point? Absolutely.
So it's splitting up the two and then knowing the difference. So a lot of it is to do with understanding. You do need to understand the difference between the two. So there's education to be done there, understanding the difference between the two, accepting that setbacks will happen, and then when they do happen, accepting it, you know. And I think for me anyway, in my personal experience, the biggest thing that's probably happened to me from a setback point of view is my dad dying, same with you. And when that happened, I mean, taking the emotion out of it, because there's still emotions involved. You know, I'm still obviously upset that that happened. I was upset at the time, but what I've done is I split them into two. So I put my emotions to one side, and I was emotional. I'm still emotional about it, but I'm accepting that it's happened and pushing forward with it. So I'm almost in two lanes when that happened. I'm at lane one is emotions, and lane one is be upset about it, cry about it, whatever you need to do. But at the same time, I'm in lane two, and the other Chris Thomas in my brain is saying, okay, I've accepted it's happened. Now you need to push forward with the estate and Kovo and all the stuff you're doing. So you push forward with it, and the two tracks are running at the same time. So as I'm going accepting it, I'm still being emotional about it, but I'm still pushing forward with it. And that for me is the way that I dealt with that. So yeah, like you say, your point is brilliant about understanding it, accepting it, planning a route forward. So
yeah, that's how I deal with setbacks. Moving on to question number 3, we've got how to focus on the now and not worry about the future. I feel like you are an absolute god for this. You just do not, you have no stresses and do not worry about anything. You just focus on what you need to do and get on with it. And it's an amazing trait that you have. So I think out of the both of us, you're definitely the one to take this forward. How do you do that?
Thank you for that. Well, something that you mentioned there about as you were answering that, I was going to say, but I forgot what I was going to say now. Believe it or not. But yeah, how to focus on the now and not worry about the future. The big thing for me with that is that we only have now. You know, we don't have the past and we don't have the future. So stressing about something we don't have is counterproductive in my eyes. And I feel like the big thing that the kind of elephant in the room, as I call it, is that we're all going to die one day. You know, you're going to die, I'm going to die, everyone you know is going to die. Everyone that's on this planet right now, all 8 billion people are going to die, you know, at some point. Yeah. So with that in mind, you know, it's a constant reminder, and it should be a constant reminder to people that you only have now, and now's the time. You know, I think sometimes people in life with things that they want to do, they plan too much, they think about things too much. And there's nothing wrong with planning and thinking. They're both brilliant things. But I'm being careful what I'm saying here is people plan too much and they think too much. You know, you can think and plan, but there's a point where it says, you know, this is too much, you know, and action needs to come. Yeah. So my view on it all is that when I want to do something that I get onto it immediately. So with the podcast, although it took us a year to actually get to starting the podcast, it didn't stop us from actually starting the behind the scenes work of the podcast. We bought the equipment for it immediately. We got the design work done. We initially planned out some of the stuff for it.
We didn't actually do a lot of planning behind it.
No, we didn't do.
We just sort of knew it's like, right, we need equipment, we need some graphics to promote it, and then the rest of it was actually doing like recording and speaking and thinking, and we just got on with it. There wasn't a lot of planning.
No, absolutely. And it's the same with other things as well. Kind of, you know, when I think of an idea that I think is going to be decent and that I like the sound of it, I'll do it and I'll go through with it and I'll just start working on it immediately. So that's a real good example of it. Is actually, you know, how does it happen? You know, it's when I think of something that I think is going to work, I basically just start working on it there and then. Not in 10 minutes, like literally immediately. When an idea comes to my head, I'll actually interrupt. And this is probably not a good way of working, but this is the way that I work. When I'm doing a task and I think of something, I'll interrupt the task that I'm doing, no matter how important it is, and I'll write it down and I'll come back to it later, or I'll just start working on it there and then. And I do think that isn't the best way to be working, because it's not efficient, because you're interrupting your work. But that is just the way that I work, and that's the way that I find that I work best.
I think people can definitely, if they have ideas or something like that, or something that they think they might want to do, is definitely interrupting whatever task you do, to write it down and then come back to it. I think that's a really good. Absolutely. I think that's something that's definitely good to do, because in that moment of time, you are thinking and your brain is processing things in a certain way, and it might not be processing that later. You might forget about it. So definitely writing it down is a good way.
Yeah.
100%.
So to come back to answering that question, how to focus on the now and not to worry about the future. For me, the bottom line of that is to remind yourself that life comes to an end, and rather than taking the negative out of that, is to actually look at the positives. So the positives in death is that you know that you're not going to be here forever. So your individual soul, your body, you as a person, there's never going to be anybody like you ever again, and there never has been anybody like you previous. So that you take the positive in the fact that you know that there's a time limit on this, and the time limit is unknown to all of us. So it's kind of like a bomb. You know, you don't know when it's going to go off. So with that being, in mind, that to me is the signal that says, I don't know how much longer I've got here. I need to do the things that I want to do. And you do need to be selfish about it. You do need to be, to live a life that you want to live, you need to be selfish about it. And what I mean by that is not selfish in terms of not being nice to other people and not caring about other people, but I mean selfish in your own goals and thinking about yourself first. You need to think about, well, this is what I want out of my life, and this is what I want to get out of it. So yeah, that for me is the important one, is focusing on the now is the only moment that you have, and that reminding yourself that you're not going to be here forever. That constant reminder in the back of your head should be looked at as a positive, thinking, well, I don't have endless amounts of time, so I better get onto the task that I want to do. I better get onto that job I wanted to apply for, or I better get onto that business I wanted to start. I better get to the gym, because it's going to be too late at some point. And like Big Al said in our last episode, don't fear failure, fear regret.
Yeah.
That's
I still think about that nearly every day.
That's a human's
between that and rascals.
Yeah, rascals. The rascals. That for me is the most important thing. And because of my dad dying when I was 18, and he died when he was 43, I think, so he was young. So that for me is a constant reminder that could happen to me. And it doesn't need to happen. A family member passing away, or somebody passing away, doesn't need to happen to you to recognize that, time is on a limit. Just take me as an example, take you as an example, your dad, your granddad passing away as well, so you have a much more conscious view on life when you recognize that, you see it in front of your own eyes. You literally see it. You're like, well, I know that this isn't going to last forever. It's a real wake, it's a waker upper. So that for me is how to focus on the now, is to remember that, the one thing is that you only have now, and the second part is that it comes to an end. But also the other flip side of that, just to quickly add, is that the question could also mean that not so much about, I'm answering this from the point of view of doing what you want to do in your life, but there's also could be the fact that somebody might be worrying about the future, in a sense that, I don't know, maybe it could be, and I'm just picking an example here, university. I'm maybe not doing too well at university. I don't know if I'm going to get this job. That's another way of looking at it. So again, it kind of comes back to that question, setbacks. Things in life don't always work out. You need to accept it, and you need to re-strategize and move on. So that it almost links into that answer that you said for question 2. So
how to deal with setbacks, kind of thing. I think one thing to add in, I think you summed it up really, really well. But to also add in, if you're obviously if it is more making things happen, like you were saying, if this is the first time that you're listening to the podcast and you haven't listened to the other episodes, definitely have a listen to once this one's finished. Go check out episode 2, where we talk about how to actually make things happen.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think especially if you're struggling, you're worrying about the future, and you're not able to focus on what you actually need to do now. Looking back at that might give you some ideas on how you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, that's definitely a good episode to watch. But yeah, my summarization of how to focus on the now is split into 2. And the first point is you only have now. There is no past and there is no future. You only ever have this moment right now, and that's the moment to be conscious of, and that's the moment to care about most, is this moment, not the future moments, is the moment right now, because these moments right now is what makes up the future. That's a good way of putting it, is rather than worrying about the future, you make your own future. So and how you make your own future is by what you do right now. And if you're wondering how to make things happen, then episode 2 is the episode for that. So yeah, and the second point is that we're all going to die, so you've got no time to waste.
The second point is we're dying.
Yeah, we're going to die, and you're either going to be put in a box or you're going to be burnt, and you need to get onto stuff before that happens.
or you can get natural burials. That's a thing. Natural
What's
burials
that?
is a thing. It's like you get buried in the actual ground. So when you decompose, like you get buried with like tree seeds and stuff, and you then after you decompose, you go back into the soil and you get turned into a tree, which I think is class.
I think I'm going to get turned into a tree then.
That's exactly. As soon as I heard that, I was like, that is for me.
Yeah. I might get turned into some shrub.
Some shrub.
Yeah.
A shrubbery. It's a shrubbery. Have you seen Monty Python before?
No, not.
Bro, you need to watch it.
Watch it.
Once this is all over and we can get back around to each other's houses, we'll get a movie night in yours with Monty Python. It's so funny.
All right, we'll watch it.
Aye, so that was a great sum up of that. Moving on to question 4, we've got
how to stop comparing yourself to others. This is your question to answer.
This is definitely one for me. I still do this now, and it's very difficult to get out of this. So it's a very complicated thing. It's not an easy one. So I think we're going to start. I'm going to explain a story, which I had a conversation with my friend Kian the other day, which I think sums this up pretty well. I said something on the episode 1 of the podcast where we're talking about our lives and getting up to this point, and I made a generalization to do with the club scene about it just being filled with ego rather than. And he brought that up to me and he sort of like challenged me on that, saying that is a massive generalization and that's not necessarily true. That's more like just a perspective thing. And he gave me a different perspective to look at it on, and I thought about it, and I was like, I had a little sort of light bulb moment. So back in those sort of days when I first started out in the club scene, I did feel like there was just ego everywhere, and his question and questioning me on this made me think about it, and I realized that the reason that I sort of blanketed said ego for that was because everyone around me was either like DJing, which is something I wanted to do, or they were running their own thing, which is something I wanted to do, or on the outside at least seemed like they were doing really well, and I was really jealous there. So I was jealous, and that's what made me think about this whole sort of ego thing. Yeah. So leading on from that, like it took me a lot of reflection after he said that to make me realize and actually come to terms with and admit to myself that the reason for that was actually jealousy rather than it being anyone else's fault. Do you know what I mean? So I said it was filled with ego. So I was putting what my feelings were and blanketing that onto them rather than me realizing within myself that rather than it was a jealous thing, and that was coming from me, and I have control over my emotions, and I have control over whether to think like that or not. So that was a really interesting thing, which lead me on to actually answer the question, how to stop comparing yourself to others and focus on you more, is if you find yourself comparing to others, you want to split it up and you want to define it into either A or B. A being whether that's you're looking at other people and comparing yourself in a way of admiration of whether you admire that person and what you admire about them, and you want to sort of do that in yourself in a positive way, or it's B, looking at them in a jealous way and looking at them being like, oh, well, they've got that and I don't have that, and then comparing yourself that way. Because I done that with you. See, when you first, we had this conversation before, and I think it's you can compare yourself to anyone. I compared myself to you when you first bought the flat, and I was like, fuck's sake, Chris is like way ahead of me. He's like buying the flat and he's moving out, and I'm still stuck in with my parents. And I quickly came to the perspective that I was jealous of you at that point, and rather than me being jealous, I chose my emotions at that point in comparing, and I turned that into more of like an admiration. I was like admiring you for buying your own flat, and I wanted to do that one day, but not putting myself down for it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So when you feel yourself comparing yourself to others, it's going to happen. There is no way to stop comparing yourself to others. I feel like when someone says you just need to stop comparing yourself, it's not realistic. Everyone compares themselves to others in some way or form. You can't stop it, but it's allowing it to happen and doing it and making a conscious decision to do it in a way of admiration rather than doing it within a way of jealousy. And if you do compare yourself to others and you see things that you like in others that you don't see in yourself, I feel like what you need to do then is acknowledge it's like, right, what are they doing that I feel like I'm not doing, which is causing me to admire them for that, and how you can implement that in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
Absolutely.
that's a way that you can stop comparing. I think the question being how to stop comparing yourself to others is unrealistic. You can't stop comparing yourself to others, but it's comparing yourself in a positive way, which is through admiration, which is through when you see something that you compare yourself, seeing what they do and try and implement that in yourself in a good way, rather than doing that in a negative way, implementing it through jealousy and allowing yourself to manifest these negative emotions, which actually in turn do you a disservice rather than a service.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a way that to first understand you're always going to compare yourself. You can't stop it, and then just think about and compare yourself in more positive ways rather than negative ways.
Yeah, because you can use comparison in a positive way.
Completely.
And yeah, and it's understanding the difference. We spoke about this before as well, is the difference between competition and comparison.
Yeah.
Because you can compete with somebody in your own head, which you shouldn't do because you're really only competing with yourself in life. But if you have an admiration to be at the same level, say you go to the gym and you look up to Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that you want to be like him, is that and you're comparing yourself to him, you think, well, I'm not very big. Rather than comparing, you can make it competition, and you can achieve those goals. But you have to be ready to put the work in to get to those goals. So yeah, I think it's totally. Is it subjective? Because in a way, they can take the positive out of it, you can take the negative out of that, and we're trying to show what positive is in comparison.
In the example you've just used, you can take it in two ways. You can take it in like you admire Arnold, that you want to be like that, and you put in the work to get to that, or you can take it in the jealous way, and you can look at Arnold being like, "Fuck's sake, I'm doing work and I'm not getting any bigger, or I'm not getting results fast enough, and I'm jealous of him." Like you can look at it in two ways. It's just choosing, because like the majority of emotions that happen to you are choices. Some people might disagree with that, but in my head, a lot of emotions are choices. You choose to be angry at someone, you choose to be disappointed in someone, or you choose to be happy with someone. Like you choose these emotions, and you can be the choice of your emotions, which is the highlight of that sort of stop comparing yourself to others. Just choose to compare yourself in positive ways, like we've discussed before, rather than choosing to compare yourself in a negative way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. No, I think that summarizes it quite well, and I think that's a good answer to the question. Our last point is about our book recommendations.
Yeah, we're going to recommend some books.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to recommend some books. So I'll go first. You've got one of my books.
Yeah.
So my first book, I've lent it to Ryan. Lent it to Ryan. So the first book is Richard Branson's "Screw It, Let's Do It." It's a really good read. It took me about 2 weeks to read. And Richard Branson, I'm sure everyone knows who Richard Branson is, started Virgin Group, which is like a multi-billion-pound company. He started it in his early 20s without any money. He had problems with dyslexia growing up, and he had different problems. He didn't have any money when he started his businesses. He basically started his businesses from absolutely nothing, and I just love the raw hustle and grind. That there was nobody backing him. He done it all himself.
What's really good about this one as well is it's like 100 pages.
Yeah, it's really quick to read. Yeah, it's really quick to read. It's really inspiring as well. It's not an expensive book either. It's really, really inspiring. And
$2.99 from Quick Reads. If anyone wants a nice cheap book, there you go.
It's brilliant, and it really puts everything into perspective, because you think to yourself, he's a billionaire. You think, I'm never going to get to that. And not that that's a goal that everyone wants to get to, but for somebody that wants to do well in life and, they want to earn money and all that kind of stuff.
Or someone that's very money orientated, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
No.
That could be.
And you think, wow, how has he managed to do that? And how he managed to do that was being creative, being open-minded, And he was just open to opportunities, and he was open to different things happening, and he just tried different things, and if it failed, I mean, he's had many businesses that have failed, and he just moved on to the next one, and he's made lots of mistakes, but he never stopped, and he's just done it all his life, and he's done tremendously well. He started with his first business when he was 15 years old, 14 or 15, was selling magazines to do with sex, I think it was, because in the time in the 50s when he was growing up, there was a lot of there wasn't much knowledge. There was no sex education class that you get nowadays. So people didn't understand about safe sex and understand about these different things, STIs and all this kind of thing. So they made a magazine for it, and they actually made a part of the school where people could come and speak to a little team of people, and it was called Virgin. That's how the name Virgin came about, because it was for virgins. It was literally for virgins, and Richard Branson at the time was a virgin, quite literally, and that's how they got the name Virgin. So they started that. They started selling magazines, and then they recognised that they could, in magazines in the old-fashioned days, you have to fill in a little form to get a record sent to you, an actual physical record. And he thought that would be a great idea to do it cheaper than every other record label. So they started selling records, and then next thing you know, you got Virgin Records. They signed loads of artists.
Move on to the airlines. Like there's tons. It's a pack. Don't give away all of it, bro. Don't give away all of it.
It's so good. It's honestly, it's so good. It's so easy to read and understand, and it's really admirable how he just stepped up each time, and it was a bigger thing and a bigger thing, and then it just went up, and now your man's got an island in the British Virgin Islands, and despite what people say about all the different things, it's his thing, and he's done it. He came from nothing, and he's made it happen, and you have to admire him for that. Without doubt. My next book is called Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter by Curtis 50 Cent Jackson.
I remember when you first got this book.
I bought this book.
One of your first books.
I pre-ordered this book in 2019.
Yeah.
And I got it in 2020. I waited like 5 or 6 months for this book to come out. It's amazing. This guy, I'll summarize the book very quickly. Talks about his life, and to summarize 50 Cent's life, he grew up in South Jamaica, Queens, in New York. His mum was a drug dealer and a prostitute. His mum was burnt and murdered in a house fire when he was 8 years old. He started selling drugs when he was 12 years old. He started making music and selling his own mixtapes. He eventually got signed to a record label, which was going to be his first break. His first break, basically. He got a record deal. And before his first album came out, he was shot 9 times, once in the face, in the arms, in the legs, and in his body as well. He survived being shot 9 times. This is after his mum died and having to sell drugs as a kid, trying to break through in music and then getting shot. 2 years after he was shot, he made a comeback, and he signed to Dr. Dre and Eminem, and he released his album Get Rich or Die Trying, which couldn't be more true. Quite literally, Get Rich or Die Trying. It's the biggest debut hip hop album of all time to this day. And that just goes to show, I love that story. His mum was murdered. He didn't even know his dad. He's never met his dad once in his life. He lived in his grandparents' basement. He sold drugs. He was shot, and he still managed to make it. And now he's involved in TV shows. He's had headphones. He's had books. He's had. He's had a boxer shorts line, he's had headphones, music, video games, clothing. He's done everything. So that for me is the thing that's, you can't let anything stop you in life. And that's the prime example,
Amazing.
So that's a brilliant book. And it talks about how he made it actually happen as well, which was interesting. It's not just a life story. It actually talks about the strategy behind stuff as well, and how to make things happen. So it's a really, really good book.
Remind me to borrow that book at some point, because I do want to read it. Although I'm the kind of person that has 6 books on the go at the same time, and then just keep randomly picking stuff up. So it's probably not the best time to do it now. That's a really good book. Probably my favorite book I've ever read in my life so far. I'm a big fan of 50 Cent as well, purely because of the fact of his life, and where he's come from, and still making it, So no excuse for any of us. The other book I'm reading just now is by Humble the Poet, and it's called Things No One Else Can Teach Us. This is a really powerful book. This guy talks about all different life experiences
And basically, to summarize it, it's really about the best way I can summarize it is it's a reminder to us of our insignificance in this universe, but our importance on planet Earth. Because in this universe, humans are completely insignificant. We don't actually matter at all. We are nothing. Absolutely nothing. You know, if the planet was to explode tomorrow, and you were to look at the whole universe, you wouldn't even notice it happening, and nobody else around us would notice it happening because there isn't anybody around us that we know in terms of life forms. So it's really nice. It's a good book because you zoom out and you think, well, actually, we are really insignificant. But then you zoom back in on the book and you actually think, wow, we actually are important on our small planet. And things that are important are our interactions with people, how we treat other people, our consciousness to the world, and the things around us, environment and other life forms around us. And you know, it kind of comes a little bit into climate change and, you know, environmentalism and being a good human, all these different factors. But it's great because it's kind of good for the setbacks thing, because you get a setback, you remind yourself, well, you know, in the grand scheme of things, none of this actually matters really, because you know, nobody's judging you on anything. You know, you'll be judged on your actions and nobody else's. And you know,
another quote from Mr. Al.
Yeah.
I was like, where have I heard that before?
You'd be judged on your actions, not anybody else's. That and our insignificance, but also our enormous impact on the planet Earth that we have as well, and our potential on our Earth. So it's a nice book. It summarizes both sides of it really well. And that, to me, I'm not finished the book yet, but I've enjoyed reading it so far. And there's a lot of information. There's information packed out of all those three books that I've just mentioned. So I'd recommend all three. And for me, they've made an impact personally. So
amazing.
Yeah, brilliant.
Fantastic.
What are your book recommendations?
Well, I'm going to go a little bit different. I've got some books up there that I'm reading just now, but I'm not going to lie, I've not finished any of them. Like I'm like halfway through maybe 6 out of the 12. But I have finished. I'm going to look at there's a platform that's run by Amazon called Audible, which is basically audiobooks. So I've finished a few in there, and they are really good. So I'm going to go through Audible. It's $7.99 a month, and if you're not a fan of reading, you don't like sitting with like a paper copy of a book, or you find it really hard to concentrate, see, just sticking your earphones in rather than listening to music or something. If you're going for a walk or run, or you're at the gym, stick on an audiobook and listen to it. It's a game changer, absolute game changer. So that's Audible. We'll put a little link down in the description to Audible to make it easy for you guys and girls. But so book recommendations. First one is, because I don't actually have the physical copy, I'm going to put a little picture up here. So the first one is James Clear, Not a Life Coach. This book is fantastic for people who are just sort of getting into the personal development, the growth mindset, and are struggling. Like, what do I do? How do I think? Like, just getting into things. And James Smith sums up so many different points to get yourself up the ladder of the personal growth. And because it's narrated by himself, I feel like it's really engaging. So that's a fantastic audiobook to go by to start yourself off on the personal development journey.
Yeah, it's just something I wanted to add in there. It's like I feel like people are finally starting to understand the value in life.
Yep.
Like, I don't think until really recent times, really in the last couple of 100 years, maybe even sooner than that, is actually how valuable life is. And I think the pandemic's really, you know, that's hit home for everyone, is how valuable life is, because people know people have passed away from COVID, and, you know, just it's people losing their jobs. But yeah, now that people really understand how valuable it is, it's a great book to read. I haven't read it, but I understand that thing is that a lot of people are like, why do I need to be a positive person? Why do I need to be in a growth mindset? You know, why do I need to try and progress and do all this stuff? Well, you don't need to do that. But once you recognize that you have the ability to do it, and you only get one chance at doing it, you might as well try it, you know? So I think that's the kind of book summarizes that. I think, I haven't read it obviously, but I think it summarizes the reasons on how to become that person and why, you know, you get to that point. So
yeah, completely. I'm just going to stray a little bit off topic, but your point with in the last 100 years, everyone's sort of changing and appreciating life more. I wonder I'm not sure, but it's an interesting thought that obviously the last thing to happen worldwide that caused so much commotion and changed everything was probably World War II. So I wonder if people who came out of that had this sort of appreciation of life, and as life has went on and generations have went on, that's sort of been lost a little bit, and that's got us to this point, and now that's a sort of reminder of
Yeah.
that to new generations who haven't experienced anything.
I mean, I think a lot of
You
things
know
have
what I mean?
happened. I absolutely agree. I think like there's been events like there was the war in Vietnam in the 60s and 70s, I think, and
But
you
that
know
didn't
there's
affect
things like,
a lot of the world. That's like
oh, I see what
between,
you mean. You're
you know what I
talking
mean?
full
Like
world.
I'm
Yeah.
talking like full scale. It's affected a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Obviously, World War II never affected the whole world, but 90% of the world was involved in some way
Yeah.
or another.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I think this has probably been the best experience for everyone. And I know that sounds it could sound bad because a lot of people could
I
say,
don't think so, because we're
yeah,
looking at things from a positive perspective,
yeah. I actually, well, my thoughts on
which
it
is absolutely
are,
not a problem.
yeah, I think COVID's been great. Not in the sense that you can die from it and it's a terrible disease, but from the point of view that it's allowed people to zoom out from life and really, they understand how precious life is
Mm,
and that you only get one chance at it. So,
completely.
there's notice that there's no sequel.
Hmm.
So you truly got to live this like it's your last movie.
Amazing. So moving on to my second audiobook recommendation. I reckon this would be pretty good in front of you for you to be able to highlight in notes and stuff as well, but I listened to it. And for those of you, which I feel like is really prominent in this day and age with young people and people who maybe listen to the podcast looking for some inspiration, is money problems. I was in tons of debt. I allowed myself to get a credit card, spent fucking all of it. Wasn't able to pay it back. I had Monzo because I couldn't. I was just spending all my wages, and then I had Monzo, which put me in a further overdraft. It was horrendous. Um, but a book that I listened to was by a guy called Dave Ramsey, which come up here, The Total Money Makeover. And what he does in that is kind of like what we're doing with the podcast, and it gives you understanding. So it's explanations on how to deal with something. So for this is how to get out of debt and then actually start making money out of that. So rather than being in a negative, it puts you in a positive and how to make more money. But it gives you actionable things that you can do in your life to get you out of where you are. Because I feel like a lot of people get stuck into debt is because they don't understand and they don't have the knowledge there and the planning, or to be able to put a plan into place to get out of it in the first
Yeah.
place. That was definitely what was wrong with myself. I never had a plan, and I just kept going on month to month, getting further into debt, spending more money because I felt bad because I was I was insecure financially, which I still am to a certain extent, but I just don't have any debt anymore.
Well, that's
And
good. I mean,
I
that's the
kept
starting
spending.
point, right? That's the starting
Exactly,
point. You don't
exactly.
get out of
I'm
debt.
not putting myself down for that, but getting out of debt is the first stage, and now I'm working on stage two, which is saving some money so that I have money to fall back on, and then in the book it sort of tells you the further stages. But for those who have a little bit of money problems, or even if you don't have money problems, but you're looking to sort of progress forward financially, and understand a little bit more, Dave Ramsey, The Total Money Makeover, is a fantastic place to start.
Yeah. Financial literacy is really important.
Completely, completely. I've got tons of books I want to read on it, but need to finish. Need to finish.
Isn't it mad? Isn't it mad that schools don't teach you how to manage money? Like the most important thing you can do probably in your
Crazy.
life is manage money, because managing money means you're managing relationships, you're
Yep.
managing, where you stay. Your money is really everything, for somebody. It's your transport, it's your clothing, and they don't even teach you how to manage it. So who's meant to who's meant to teach us managing money?
It's crazy, but I think we should keep this for another podcast because we could get like I could ramble on about this for about half an hour, right?
Yeah.
The education system.
Yeah.
But moving on to my third book recommendation. So I've sort of tried to curate my three books to give people a sort of purpose on different topics that have affected me personally. And one thing, the next book is by a guy called David Goggins called Can't Hurt Me. And it's a biography or autobiography. I can't remember the difference between the two about him and his life. Like you had with Curtis Jackson.
Yeah, 50
Yeah,
Cent.
yeah, 50 Cent, Curtis Jackson. In
In the club.
In the club. it goes on about his life, and he made his way up to Navy SEAL. He done the trial and the training for the Navy SEALs 4 times, 4 times, which is already mental. He managed to finish it on, I think he had 2 broken shins. He's like ran countless number of ultra marathons, like bleeding feet, still keeps going, and just this guy is probably the most motivational person on the planet to look at what he's achieved and the thought process that he puts into things that makes you think. I'm just being shite. Like, this guy can do all this stuff by just thinking about it and then actioning it. What am I doing? But what the way that the book's done, it's not just like your biography where it's like you're just reading along. They stop in between chapters, and the narrator that's reading it and David Goggins himself chat about the book himself, chat about the book and what his thought process was at that time, and gives you actionable things to take away. This is a really important thing to keep coming back on, is having actionable things that you can actually do. And this book does that in between chapters. So if you're lacking a bit of motivation and you're looking to listen to something to help take you forward in that sense, this is the book for you. And it's a great listen because it's done in the way of a podcast.
Yeah.
So that is my third recommendation, which is up here. I can't remember if I put my finger up earlier, but it's here.
Yeah. Good. Well, that's us answered all the questions. A little thing I wanted to add. We did get more questions than we've answered today. A couple of the questions around motivation and embracing fear were answered in podcast 2, How to Make Things Happen. So for those who asked that, listen to podcast 2. And for the other questions that we haven't answered today.
There's another couple. But the questions are so broad that we'd be doing a disservice to answer them in 15 minutes. You can actually take a full podcast on breaking that down and putting it into actionable steps for you. So if your question hasn't been answered, we do plan to answer them in the future in some way or form.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. No, that's all of those questions answered. I hope that what we've both said today helps people and that they're valid points, being made. So yeah, just remember that you're going to die, and do you know what I mean? And use that. That's a strength, being conscious of that. And something I'll add to that is I used to worry a lot about dying. I used to think about it in a negative way, in almost a worrying way, thinking, I'm going to die one day. But recently I've actually been in a really positive way about it and thinking, I know that I don't have, a lot of time left, and that I need to get on with what I want to do in life, and I don't want to let anybody, stop that or prevent that from happening. So that's why for me it's important to just go ahead with everything that I want to do, and not to let anything stop me. And that is a reminder for me that the inevitable happening, which is death. So it's a great reminder because it's fact, it's going to happen. So that's my way with it. And just deal with problems face on, just go and attack problems and just go after them. And, put your feelings aside, put your nerves aside and put your anger aside, and all these emotions can be dealt with in another part of your brain. They don't need to be out in the front line. Your best self is always out in the front line. Your confident self is always on the front line, and the best version of you is on the front line. And you can be nervous. I've been very nervous at a lot of different occasions to do with work things, and in the back of my head, I'm still feeling nervous, but at the front of my head, I'm still taking action on what I'm doing. If it's public speaking, as I'm walking up to the stage to talk, I'm still feeling nervous, and as I'm opening my mouth and talking to everyone, I'm still feeling nervous, but I'm just doing it anyway. Yeah, that's the way that I deal with it. So It's all about action and not wasting time. So that's my summary message to everyone.
Wonderful summary. Well done.
My last thing. Thank you very much. What have we got coming up next? What's coming next in the podcast?
Coming up next, we have Yogi Houghton. So Yogi's a DJ. He's DJ'd everywhere. He has such an interest in life because everything that we're talking about with having a purpose and knowing what you want to do and really going forward with that, he's had none of it. This is it from the other end of the spectrum of still creating success around doing what he loves, but not having a plan and not having a purpose. He has one, which is music, and he's managed to just do that his whole life because that is the one. That's all he's thinking about. He's got other crazy stories, which you'll hear about.
A little bit.
He's some cookie.
Some cookie. There's like police stories, arrested, family issues, funny stories. There's everything in it. Honestly, it's packed. So that I'm really looking forward to that. We also have Kima and Keshab, the two brothers who run and own Salty and Gutams, the two
Nepalese restaurants.
Nepalese restaurants in Edinburgh, and they've ran club nights before, and they've got a really interesting story and how they grew up. And
plug, they do the best momos in town. Unbelievable.
Yeah, no, their food is banging. Their food is banging for sure. And our last recorded guest, your man.
We've got Michaeli, who runs the Chiverinos group, who has like Chiverinos. They've got Chiverinos Slice up near the Meadows. Got a High Dive, and they've got a couple of new restaurants coming, which you can see on their socials or wait until the podcast.
Yeah, so we've got 3 really strong guests coming up. We've got more in the pipeline. We've got lots of good stuff planned, some really, really good stuff planned, in fact, that we're really looking forward to, and really excited to get back to recording stuff in person. I'm buzzing for that.
We've got to do what we've got to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So
just get on with it.
Yeah, no, I hope that helped everyone, and good catching up with you, Ryan, and we'll speak to everyone on the next podcast.
Yes, we will. Peace out.
Nice one. Bye, everyone.